Welcome to the Cali Sober Mom Podcast. Monica and Brittany are changing the conversation about motherhood, cannabis, and mental health, considering themselves unhinged Martha Stewart adjacent. Monica is a previous corporate America warrior turned mom and voice in the cannabis and consumer advocacy world. Brittany is an artist, business owner, mother, and mental health advocate. Now, here are your hosts, the Cali Sober Moms.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Cali Sober Mom. We have Monica here and my co-host, Brittany. And today we are super excited to welcome Elizabeth, a certified Ganjier, community integrator, and a geriatric toddler mom. Might be my favorite way you've ever described yourself.
That's incredible.
She is inspiration and who I kind of want to be when I grow up. She has a lot of those traits. But she's really skilled in building community and bringing her corporate background in. And I feel like that is a perfect mesh of what and who Brittany and I are. So we are so excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm excited to be with you.
Thanks. Would you like to tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you got into this space?
Sure. I'm coming to you live from my community center. We did a little prep and a rundown on how important community is in a lot of different aspects. So as somebody who builds a lot of community, having a community like this that supports me, and I have childcare downstairs, has been really, really helpful. I grew up in northern Minnesota, and I spent about 5 years down here in Minneapolis before spending 15 years in Chicago working for a private investment company. And I have been a cannabis user since I was 15 and always knew that I liked the way that it made me felt, but I never understood why and how. And largely, throughout my whole corporate life, it had never been something that I was able to mesh into it. It had always been something that I did, but did sort of on the side and lived a very different 9-to-5 life. It's very, nightlife driven, very alcohol driven. And then, when I had kids, I was able to pull back from that a little bit. And we decided in 2018 to move back to Minnesota, where we had a little bit more family support. It was closer to be by my parents and my husband's parents. And as soon as I moved, Illinois legalized by executive order. So it wasn't even in my radar. And we moved, and I was like, well, now we just moved our whole family, so we're probably not going back. And how can I get involved where I am now? And so that was 2018, and I started doing some cannabis tourism. I looked at maybe becoming a dispensary owner or doing cultivation. And that lasted for a few years. Then COVID hit. And at the very beginning of COVID, I came across a program online to become a cannabis sommelier. And everything about it just kind of spoke to me because it had this entire breadth of experience that you would get. It had an in-person live element where you got to visit a farm, you got to learn how to assess it properly, you got to meet with all of these different people that have had this long legacy in cannabis, right? Because while it's been federally illegal for quite some time, it has still thrived in Northern California and other parts of the world. And they've really kept the legacy alive. So going up there and getting to hear the stories of the people who went, back to the land from the 60s in San Francisco and have built these families, to hear about the raids that they went through during the 80s and the 90s, and the families that have been torn apart and that are really just getting rebuilt in this day and age. And now they've gone into the legal market, and that's, largely been decimated in California. It's heartbreaking in a lot of ways, but the stories of resilience up there are so beautiful. So I went up there for that live training, got immersed in all of that, got to soak in all this knowledge, went back a couple months later, got a certification. And, there's a really special feeling up there. And I'm a spiritual person, and I understand like the energy and the earth. And when you go up there, you feel something very, very different, and it resonates. And I wanted more of that feeling. And I wanted to be able to have the connection to the people who were invested in cultivating that, and people who are invested in taking this plant that's been demonized for so long and moving it forward into the world in a very normal way, not a scary way, but like in a very well-versed, well-thought-out way. And so born out of that program is a subscription-based community that I host now. And so it's open to people who are certified Ganjier or are studying to become Ganjier. And we meet 3 times a week. We do amazing deep dives into different areas of the industry, different technology, different cultivators. And really, it's a little bit of therapy. It's a lot of helping people out, listening to their stories. And I think that's what's, my favorite part about cannabis is everybody has a story of how they got there. And a lot of times there's people in cannabis that don't use cannabis, but it saved their grandparent or their uncle, or they have seen what it can do topically. And even, I have people who in my DMs, it's so funny, on all of my Instagram stories go to Facebook. And so I have people who are reaching out from high school that I haven't talked to from 25 years ago. I had a woman that I went to Bible camp with reach out to me a week ago and ask me, like, my friend's husband died and he was growing weed and she doesn't know what to do with it. Can you help me? And another woman who was like, I want to give my dog CBD, I think. Like, what do I do? I don't know anything. So there's a huge desire for the knowledge to be brought to that mainstream level. And in my community, we have people coming from all these different spectrums of the industry, and they're coming together and they're talking about it and they're sharing about it, and they're building a network of informed individuals who can then go out into their respective areas and start spreading that knowledge and making it a little more normal and easy for people.
I'm so in love with you.
Sweet Jesus. Can we get married? I mean, I already am, but God, cheaper.
Well, between your 5, your 3, and my 3, like, I think a sister wives type situation,
there could be an
benefit all of
entire
us.
farm of these youths and well-regulated mothers. Is all I'm saying. It'd be fantastic. So a huge thing that I'm already immediately drawn to, I can tell you are borderline one of the most authentic people I've ever met. And I've approximately known you for 13 seconds at this point. So let's be real about that. But when we were talking right before we started the show, you had said something about authenticity and collaboration. And I want you to expand on what that means to you in the cannabis space, because I have really strong opinions about what that means in the neurodivergent space. We spoke a little bit about this, but I'm a late diagnosed ADHD and autistic human. That in and of itself doesn't really do much. That diagnosis outside of medication management pretty much actually means nothing for me, other than my life insurance policy is way more expensive now. That's pretty much all that it means. Outside of that, though, I have found that by collaborating with others who may or may not have a diagnosis, it doesn't fucking matter, but it's the exact same in the cannabis space too. It doesn't matter if you're using it. It doesn't matter if it doesn't matter. What matters is the knowledge. What matters is the community, and what matters is the support. So I want you to talk about what you have seen from an authenticity standpoint with everyday people that have figured out Ganjier is the route for them to go, that is what they want to use to support the industry, to grow and to improve and to do all of these things. So tell me a little more about your work as a disruptor and how that plays into things.
Well, so I think everybody just wants to be seen and heard, and I'm included wholeheartedly in that demographic. And so finding a place where people can come and show up in a way that suits them, because not everybody can show up and do a podcast. Not everybody can show up and, hold a picket sign or table at an event, or there's so many different ways that people are able to show up. And some people want to show up louder than others. And so being able to hold space for all of those different things, I think, is what's important to me, because I've been someone at times who wants to be the leader of the crowd. And I've been someone who wants to sit on the Zoom, camera off, just absorbing the information and not be seen at all. And everybody comes to things at different times, at different places. I think there's a lot of people who, join our sessions every week from their jobs, where their jobs don't know what they're doing. Because when I first started my sessions, I had a job and they didn't know what I was doing. Right. So it's, and I try to remember that I don't know why they're doing what they're doing too, right? And everybody's just doing their best. I keep that at the forefront of all of my thoughts. And people show up how they need to for themselves, and you will show up for people how they need it. And that's sort of that energetic connection that draws some people together. And I think that's why, again, we have people from so many different facets of the industry that just have the same resonance. And so regardless of their socioeconomic status, regardless of their political status, regardless of the color of their skin, they're just all vibrating at the same frequency. They want the same things in the world. They want to be able to be a part of what they see as a change that is happening in people. And they know that they can, but they also need to feel empowered to do that, because we're not really
1000%.
taught to like be out on our own. We were just talking about like feeling weird. Nobody wants to feel weird. Nobody wants to be the weird kid. And, you know, there's even rooms and places that I go in still that I realize like I'm the only cannabis person here. Like everyone looks at me and they're like, oh no, she's the pothead. And, you know, like that couldn't be further from the truth, but that's not up for me to change that for them, right? Like that's the lens of them coming through to me. And I can only just show up how I am, hope that they see me. And if they don't, realize like that you can only, I think we said this the other day, Monica, like you can only meet someone as far as they've met themselves. And like, I can be cool with you're not there yet. And that's okay. That's not about me.
That's a skill, though. I will say, in this therapeutic, life-changing spiritual journey that I am on right now, if anyone starts from the beginning and listens to this one, like you will hear me grow. Like I just decided to grow out loud. But that is one of the biggest skills that I've had to learn, is that I can only meet people where they're at. And by doing that, it's beautiful in a way. Sometimes it's frustrating because you want to shake someone, of course, and say, but why don't you see this? But their life experiences aren't what yours are. The mainstream media that they saw in their house growing up isn't what ours are. Their vices that they use to calm their brains aren't what we are. So we're all seeing the world from this different perspective. And although you may think you're further along or seem further along, you just keep leading by example. And when you meet them there, instead of combating them, which I think the world sets us up to do, is if we're not the same, then we're bitter enemies, right? And it's easier if we're apart. But if you just meet them where they're at, that's not compromising who you are. It's not changing who you are, but you're just meeting them and you can have a discussion. You may learn something, you may not, but they may learn something. And I just think that's so beautiful, because you both are doing that. You both are creating communities where people can come in as who they are, meet other people where they are, and then grow from there. And outside of you guys, I just don't see a lot of that in the world.
It's a new realm. It's a new realm. We're working on it. Okay, so I want to read my Facebook post to you that I made yesterday, because it's a little weird. It's a little weird, Elizabeth.
That's
Not
okay.
if you're spiritual. Things happen for a reason, ladies.
Miss ma'am, they sure do. Everything changed when I realized it was none of my business what other people thought about me. None. At the end of the day, it's not their fault. They didn't know my intentions. I likely wasn't clear enough. And it's also not my responsibility to stress about how I'm perceived if I'm truly doing the best I can. Be kind, do good, move on. Love.
Love that. Real quick summary.
Because it is so much the same things. Like it's all of the same things. And I think that it's so valid that you're doing it in a slightly different space that has this overlap piece, because the amount of people I've talked to and about with cannabis that are also neurodivergent adjacent in some way, typically are feeling othered or alienated or the weird one. Like, why would I choose to treat brain differentiation and disorder to live in the world we live in today using a tool that works for me? And if you're thinking about it as anything other than a tool, then you're probably needing to do more research, because at the end of the day, any medicine we take in any way, shape, or form is a tool. That is exactly what it is. There's no two ways about it. And I think that it does bring people together in a very different way, because it offers a different option for so many groups of humans, whether that is pain sufferer, whether that is neurological differences, whether that is biological differences, whether that is emotional health, mental health. There's so many pieces. I also have chronic shingles. Guess what the only thing that has ever cleared that up been? I bet you don't need two guesses.
I'm like, is it full spectrum? Like what? Like, because I'm always really curious, is that, a lot of times those single molecule isolates, depending on how you take them, don't necessarily do the job for something like shingles. So I'm
topical for mine. It was topical. It was a topical resin-based, not tincture, but it was like a salve or whatever. But because it had open because it has open pustules.
Yep.
It doesn't keep it away, but it immediately can soak in and
Yep.
affect the virus that's present. So, which is
That's very interesting.
and it's very neurological.
I was going to say
So-
there are some minor cannabinoids like CBC that have antiviral
Right.
properties. And so, that's one of those things for me, at least. People don't realize, people think of cannabis as an intoxicating plant, and and you couldn't be further from the truth. Like, it's one tiny molecule that we get really, really worked up over. And then you have this like an endless list of other things you can do with the plant that are so beneficial.
I think that was one that was really interesting for me the first time I gave somebody this. So I had been in Colorado. I was shooting a wedding and I had shingles. And I just literally it was the very first dispensary I had ever walked into. And odd that it took severe pain for me to walk into one and finally be like, nope, I got to go. I got to have somebody help me with this. And I spoke to my bud tender about what was going on, the a duration of time, what they usually were like, whatever. And he gave me 3 options and 3 different price points that had different things. And he explained why each one might be a better fit. And that at the end of the day, as long as, I try it, if it doesn't work, bring it back. We'll talk about it. We'll see what we can do. There's things to be done because it was a medical situation. Even though I didn't have a medical license, he was able to offer different options. So then this was many, many, many years ago. So Colorado was the only place really even doing that outside of California. And that was pretty much it. And that is the very first thing that changed it for me in thinking about it. I had very much used cannabis, but always recreationally, never medicinally. And now I use it for my brain medicinally, but it's a different realm of things.
As we've all said, a lot of people fall into this. They never thought they would be here. They never thought they would dip their toe. That's the majority of women and audience I speak with, is people that never thought that they would be here. They always had preconceived notions, or even if they didn't have this like dire, I'm against it, it wasn't worth even venturing over there, right? That was counterculture. That was something different. And I've had this discussion on other podcasts about, I don't even like to walk into a dispensary. I haven't found one that speaks to me, that I feel you don't know what you're going to get. So all that being said, let's say naive little Monica from a year ago in Louisiana and in Iowa too, because there's not as many options. I speak to people in these still very, very restricted spaces, right? Say we want to dip our toe in. We want to start learning. When you go on Google or you ask your friends or Reddit, the amount of misinformation out there is staggering. Where would you even recommend? I know you more work with the community that is educating to build the correct knowledge to then go to the consumer, right? So where's the best middle spot? If you guys are here and you're educating each other and the consumer's here, where are we meeting in the middle? Where do you recommend if they're not ready to walk into a dispensary and they want to start researching on their own?
How do I put this? When I first started in my cannabis business journey and wanting to know more about it, there's a handful of podcasts that I listen to on a somewhat regular basis that I don't know if they still exist because I have evolved past that. And there's a few that I know don't still exist that I really, really enjoyed. But I have probably a dozen episodes of particular podcasts that I have bookmarked because I think they just do a really great job of giving people an overall synopsis of it. I wrote a course called Cannabis that has 5 different modules that takes people through sort of what I think is the most important parts of cannabis. I think just even finding it's trial and error when it comes to dispensaries, because I have been to so many, and I'm a shopper at heart. I'm a consumer product goods girl. I was in, I've had lots of stints in retail in my life. I was a makeup artist for many years. I love products. And I think that's one of the things that really draws me to cannabis is there's so many products that they're making all the time. I love flavors. I love packaging. There's just every single part of it speaks to me in a different way. The resources, like I said, I've got sort of my list of things that I would give to people. I think finding the right dispensary is where I was going. It's trial and error. Finding a really good bud tender and developing a relationship. I think part of it too is just doing that little bit of education so you go in with a basis of knowledge and not expecting when you go into a retail setting, them to know exactly how to react. Because a lot of times people just don't have the training. There's websites like Leafly I looked at a lot in my early days. Again, because I'm a consumer products person, before I ever go into a dispensary, I always look to see what they have online. I'm always
Every time, without fail. I
just
can't do
curious.
it without it.
Gotta
Just
know what
do
I'm
it.
going for.
I am so opposite. I am anti-packaged goods. I am anti-consumerism. Like, just, it's so weird. So it's like, to me, I was like, I want to have the most perfect knowledge. And then I want to get it confirmed to me that I found the most perfect knowledge, because I hate spending money on things I don't like. I feel like this weird thing. So it's so funny how there's so many different varieties out in the world. Sorry, that was a tangent.
No, that's okay. I think it's hard because regulations are different in every state. And so it's hard to give anybody you can give them an overarching education, but when it comes to what to look for in their state, which is what I think a lot of people want to know, like, well, I'm in Illinois, what should I get? It's like, well, you should probably get over to Michigan. They've got a lot better stuff is what you should get.
Correct.
But if you want to stay there, like here's a handful of things. So it's really, I think when people start to understand, I do really enjoy ingredients. And so a lot of people don't understand the difference between distillate, a live resin, and a rosin. And understanding, like if cane sugar is the first ingredient, like that's probably not going to be your healthiest option. I think we do a big disservice to a lot of cancer patients, a lot of people who are using, cannabis, whether it's, marijuana or hemp derived, giving them this modality that is pure sugar when we know that's exactly what the cancer is looking for. I don't know how gummies became the thing. And that's, like what a huge portion of the market is. We want it to be like candy and taste good, which I totally understand. But I think helping people move past that and finding different modalities that still serve those same purposes, but maybe honor the plant a little more and are at least able to get like whole plant ingredients. So, allowing consumers to understand the difference between this was made from, distilled down to a single isolate. And this is all of the parts of the plant that have benefit. So it's not just your THC, but there's probably some CBD. There might be some CBG, maybe some CBC, all of these other things. And there are like flavonoids and thiols and esters and all of these other components to the plant that you can get with full spectrum that you don't get from other things. So your question was where to get that information. I guess just listen to this. And I just told you everything you need to know.
We will link it in the show notes. It'll be in the show notes.
What I hear is we're going to put a link to the Cannabis. I don't know if you have a PDF yet of your 12 favorite episodes.
No, I could.
Yeah, I would listen. That would be the order I would probably listen to things in, because I am that person that we just spoke about. Like, I barely came over here, but I knew that there was something here. And I knew that there were so many women in the position that I had been where, I kind of just stayed away from it. I used alcohol and it wasn't great. And I was going through postpartum. And so I knew there were so many women like me that something wasn't right, but they couldn't pinpoint it and they don't know what else is out there. But in terms of education, I feel like I still know 1% of what needs to be out there. I just know my skill is best combining the two worlds. Like, I'm never going to be able to learn enough to tell everybody. So that will help finding where I can bring those resources to the women that are just kind of women or men or individuals getting over that hump. Because until you can feel comfortable knowing what to ask for or feeling comfortable in what you try, you are going to just maybe grab the gummy that tastes good, because that doesn't have to rewire your brain. It tastes good and you're safe and you're comfortable. So all that to say, I think that there's a huge realm out there of disconnect that all of this together will bring so much. So we will link all that in the show notes for you, the listener.
The other thing I just want to touch on is I think a big part of the resistance to the education is the illegality of it, because we talk very freely about it because hemp is legal under the Farm Bill, because I live in a state where I can possess cannabis and not get in trouble for it as long as it's within the limits. But a lot of people, half the country does not. And so for a lot of people, this is still a very taboo topic. It's not something that people are having open conversations about. And there's real ramifications. And I think about some of the situations that I put myself in to get cannabis over the years, that I've probably put my family and children in over the years. And that was, a calculated risk. And I'm thankful that it turned out for me the way that it did. But a lot of people they don't know the benefits, so they don't know to take that risk. They don't understand what we're working with. But it's, women in particular, I think, are just different consumers. And I'm not saying that men necessarily consume more, but they consume differently, because women, their roles as primary caregivers doesn't allow them that same flexibility to get maybe as high as they would like to, because they still have all of these other responsibilities that fall to them. And they can't risk losing their children either in states where it's not legal. And so it's interesting. I met a guy a couple of weeks ago, and he was a single dad, and he was telling me his story, and he's kind of coming out of the cannabis closet for the first time in Minnesota, and he's really excited to talk to people about it. But he told me that same story, and I was like, do you know how many times I've heard that story? And do you know that you are the first man that I've ever heard that story from? And that is, that's a lot of things. But I was just like, so like, because it is everybody. I think we think of it as a female, thing and us as mothers, but there are a lot of men that are sole caregivers and primary caregivers, and it's hard for them too. So, breaking the stigma, the more people have a general base knowledge around it. I'm glad that CBD is legal in so many places. I'm disappointed that a lot of the market is what it is. It's been difficult to try and explain to people THCA and THCO and THCX and HHC and all of these other minor cannabinoids that the Farm Bill has bred, but at least it's opening the discussion.
I would say that too, adjacently, my husband is military and has an easily 100% connected rate outside of having deployed 2 times, and will be deploying a 3rd in April. And outside of that, he still can't even think about doing it without the risk of being kicked out of the military. And I know on 2 hands people that we have lost to this world because they didn't have proper mental health treatment. And when I tell you this would have, could have, and should have been a fucking option, it is one of the hills I will die on gladly.
Yeah. Well, and it's maddening because you start to realize there's it's more than just cannabis. And that's what I have really started, like my journey the last 4 years has been like, oh no, it's not. It's our food, it's our water, it's our air. It's why I think that I don't smell as good as I used to, because I wear natural deodorant. We make choices. Do you know what I mean?
We make choices. They're mitigated choices.
There's balance counts. We can't,
I know you weren't making fun of me, for the record. I happen to be drinking a Diet Mountain Dew mid Elizabeth's point.
Yeah, no. And I mean, because I still love a Diet Coke, but I used to be able to drink a Diet Coke like I could drink 10 Diet Cokes a day. And now.
And some vices take longer. It's part of it. It's part of your journey as well. Diet Mountain Dew is the one that I decided was that's my one. That's the one I'm keeping. And it's wild because we have these weird pick and choose things, but also that's what makes us human. That's what makes us normal. No, we can't be infallible and only where,
Well, life is hard. And if something makes you happy, and in the relative scheme of things, it's not hard.
Harm reduction, folks. I cannot thank you enough for coming on here.
You've taught me so much today.
Oh, good.
I absolutely adore you. I'm so happy we have a platform
Same.
to share everything that you're doing. And for our listener, we're going to connect all the amazing things she's doing in the show notes. We talked about a lot today. And if there's any one tangent or nugget that speaks to you, email and let us know, and we'll expand upon it for you so you can learn. But until then, we will see you next time. Thank you, Elizabeth.
Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to the Cali Sober Mom podcast. The best way for us to get the word out is you. So share this episode with someone you know who will enjoy it. And be sure to follow Cali Sober Mom on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you're consuming the show right now.